morning. I'm Todd Tritchler, and I'm here with Rob Lockard, who recently won in the database design category for our Oracle Database Developer Choice Awards. It's always interests me how people get to where they get. I mean, how do you become a top-notch security guru? Did you wake up one morning as a teenager and say, hey, this would be really cool, I'm going to go do that? Or
we're going to rewind back to about 1978, 1979, right in that area. I was in the Navy and I had the opportunity to meet Grace Hopper. And I was 18 or so years old. And I remember saying something to her that a kid would say, I would never be as great as you are. And she started poking me in the chest saying, young man, success comes in can, failure comes in can. That just, drilled into my brain. And then several years later, I was working for Canon as an IDMS programmer. And my boss calls me into his office and says, you are now our Oracle wizard. And I fussed with him, swore he was going to destroying my career. And to this day, I still send him Christmas cards.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's how I got my company name, Oracle Wizard, from my boss. But then about 2010, my mother had downloaded a keylogger, and I was into security prior to that. My mother had downloaded a keylogger on her machine, and somebody had wiped out all of her bank accounts.
Wow.
And my mother grew up in the Depression, extremely poor, and she thought she was destitute, and she had to be hospitalized and heavily medicated. The following Friday, my father had a stroke, which got me really upset. At first, you get pissed off, and then you say, well, I'm really going to do something about it. I upped my game at speaking at conferences, putting information out, helping people wherever I can to, have a good security apparatus to lock down the data. You may remember years back, we locked down the software. Well, really, we just need to follow the data. And that's how that all came about.
Yeah. Wow, that's a pretty interesting story. Now, I was on your blog earlier, and I was reading an article about InfoSec requirements for securing database as a service and in the cloud and that, and securing the database, what you're looking out for. And you had an interesting comment where you said 20 years as a DBA, a DBA doesn't actually need access to the data to get his job done, or a sysadmin either, for that matter. At first blush, that comment sounds like, yeah, really? Are you going to stand by that? What's your response?
My response to that is all of that information, if you go into tuning the information, tuning queries, all of that information is stored in statistics tables, so you can tune from there. Backing up data, you're going to have jobs that back up that get the data out. And like RMAN, what it does is a block level copy. You're not looking at the data. And then if you're doing data guard, you can data guard over an encrypted network. Or if you're doing Golden Gate supports the encryption natively. I'm getting off course. But there's no reason for a DBA to actually get into and looking at the data. Now, you may have an applications DBA who works closely with the business unit who might have a need to get in there, but in all honesty, no. I can do all the work of a DBA and never look at the data. And quite frankly, I've known a few DBAs that I call data voyeurs. They go, oh, what do we have here? And you walk up behind them, smack them behind the head and say, please don't do that.
Yeah. And you also had an interesting point about how even the top tier cloud providers like Oracle, you said, will vet people at the start. And however, people change. And you made an interesting point about Snowden, that he's gone through polygraphs and tested, and I'm sure that, the government vetted him and the NSA vetted him before they put him on as an analyst. But at some point in time, he was in a position of privilege and changed. So how do you protect against something like that?
Well, there we have database vault. And with database vault, what you're doing is you're walling off the data from your systems administrators. And again, it gets back to they do not need to see the actual data in order to do their jobs. So and you can put all kinds of things in there. You can put use database vault to also create a trusted path. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Are you talking about the key vault?
No. To create a trusted path where you can add a method to database vault, so somebody will only come in a certain way.
Okay.
And what it's called is escaping me right now. And actually, I have my red book because I was writing about that last night. Let's see here. Factors, data vault factors. That's what it's called. It's basically methods and concepts that you can attach to database vault to control how the data is accessed. And I'll get into that a little bit more on trusted access paths to get to the database or get to the data.
So, obviously you've been, when you look at these various different things in terms of securing the cloud services, and I encourage anybody that is actually watching this to check out your blog and read that article. I thought it was very well written, and it gave a good overview of different attack vectors that could expose, to somebody to a breach. And also gave good ideas in terms of, okay, here's what you want to do, is start looking into in terms of securing and locking those down. And I know that that's something that our development teams are very, very focused on in terms of reducing the surface area of the attack vector and making sure that there isn't only one point of failure, that it's not like Linux where if you get root access, it's like, okay, Bob's your uncle, you've got what you want.
Right.
You've got to be able to lock it down more than that. There's got to be several levels. And I was very interested in terms of how they were planning on using stuff like that in terms of key vault and data vault and stuff like that to lock it down. You've obviously seen real world production applications where there's been obviously issues. What are some of the more interesting usages you've seen of the database in terms of security in that?
Well, in terms of security, I was on a project at FinCEN. FinCEN is Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, tracks terrorist money, money laundering, basically finds the bad people's money. Well, in order to do that, FinCEN has to gather data from banks, casinos, basically any business that deals in any kind of cash. And when you start bringing that information in, that is incredibly sensitive information. As a matter of fact, it goes into a room where data never comes out. It's called a SCIF.
Sorry, I missed that. It's called what?
A SCIF. Is it a little rowboat?
Okay, a little SCIF, yeah. Uh-huh.
Because that data is so sensitive, there are certain things. One is called a suspicious activity report, and the suspicious activity report says the bank doesn't believe that you should be walking in and depositing $9,900 every week, just right underneath the $10,000 reporting requirement. That's suspicious. Well, there might be a good reason for that. Your rich grandmother who never trusted banks has all of her money under the mattress, and every week she just wants to give you an allowance.
Yeah.
There might be a good reason for it, and for that reason, you don't want that information to go out where we know what a person's finances are. It's just So we locked it down. We locked it down through encryption and ways that I really can't discuss too much. We don't want anybody accessing that financial information. Banks don't want people accessing it. Absolutely not.
Definitely a need-to-know basis.
It is your private information.
Yeah.
And we want you to trust us that we are going to protect your private information. So, we used encryption, obviously. We used a couple of other technologies, heavy on the audit. If somebody from the help desk ran too many queries against the database, we would go and say, excuse me, can you please explain that? Usually there was a good reason for it. If we had one case where we had shared logins, where someone was sharing their login, and we caught that the next day because every day we came out with an audit report of odd things. Audit is still wonderful, and which brings me to Audit Vault, which is a whole lot better than my old Oracle version 10 audit reports.
Okay. And why is it so much better? I mean, I haven't actually played around with that at all. So explain it to a complete newbie in that area.
Audit Vault, you can bring in data from all of your applications. You can bring in data from your servers. You bring that all in, and you get a BI interface. And the way I like to explain it is something probably a whole lot of people don't do. Every system you work with has got a heartbeat. It's how the data flows. It's who's querying at what times. And you can put this BI interface on it, and you can see on a dashboard what your system's doing. And when you see something pop up that's just out of the norm, it sticks out like a sore thumb, because you're using, analytics to look at the thing as at this big picture and giving you the ability to drill down into it. You with me?
Yep.
So,
and then the Audit Vault itself did you use to hand code that stuff in terms of the reports versus?
Oh yeah. I've got a lot of hand coded reports that I'll probably donate to the Smithsonian.
Okay. So a lot of the underlying plumbing you don't have to do anymore. Is that what you're saying?
Right. And as your data changes, as your attack vectors change, you're constantly, rewriting these reports, trying to make them better. Well, now with Audit Vault, first it comes with canned reports, but it comes with a BI interface that you can easily customize.
I see.
So, and of course, with Audit Vault, database firewall rolls with it too, which gives you another level of protection, specifically on SQL injection, where you can whitelist SQL statements coming in. You can block SQL statements. You can alert on them. It is a highly configurable product that actually right now in my current project, they are asking me to look at implementing.
So then that works. I mean, I'm familiar with, say, Linux firewalls and stuff like that. So how does the database firewall work in terms of, is it a similar concept there?
It's similar concept of allow, deny, but you also have alert, modify. So you'll have a SQL statement, and I haven't dug down into the internals, how it does it, but it probably just gets a hash of the SQL statement, hits the firewall and says, yes, that's a whitelisted SQL statement. We can send it on through, or no, we don't want that SQL statement. You can either append where 1 equals 2 on it. You can do all kinds of things. So what goes back to whoever sent it is nonsense.
Okay. So it actually, it sounds like that not only does it help you reduce the attack surface, it vets the actual programs that are getting access as well.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that is one layer of protection against SQL injection.
Okay.
We have other layers that we want to implement too in secure coding.
Excellent. So obviously, I'm going to ask you this question. In 12c, what's your favorite security feature? Pick one. Okay, two. I'll give you two.
Two, accessible by and the ability to attach roles to PL SQL packages. And I'll tell you why. I'm big on segmenting my data, my application code, and my application API into different schemas. So if I have a set of tables that are sensitive, I can create a select sensitive role. Select on those tables to my select sensitive role, and then I can grant that role to the API that accesses the sensitive tables. Then I can use the accessible by and say, this PL SQL unit that belongs in another schema can execute the API to access the sensitive data. In the past, what we did was you go grant select to a schema. So now every program in that schema, all the PL SQL, all the Java, has unfeathered access. So now we're getting fine-grained access, fine-grained security to go back to what I call a trusted path. We have a path from a user through the application interface to the API to the sensitive information. And when we add on top of that invokers' rights to the application program that calls it the sensitive API,
yep,
you get real good control over who can get in to that information, who can pull information out of there.
So it's a similar in terms of functionality, in terms of how you used to only be able to encrypt a whole table, and now you can do it by column or row level. It's a finer grained security now available to you.
Correct. Yeah, I remember encrypting rows. What was that? The DBMS OBSEC, I can't even say it anymore, package. I don't even know if anybody uses it anymore. I know it's been depreciated.
Yeah.
One was granting a role to a package, and the other was the accessible by. You're going to use.
Okay, so the combination of the two gave you your secure path.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. And then you, okay, I'll give you another one. Let's see, real application security. We can now we have lightweight connections. So when a user connects to a web server to run their code, okay, in the past, the web server logged on, and it was, when you went to the audit trail, the web server was what was doing all the work.
Yeah.
You would have to go back to the logs on the web server to figure it out. Well, now with real application security, you can create a lightweight connection that follows back to the user, okay, which will help you on invokers' rights, number one. And number two, it's going to help you in your audit trail. So you say, hey, Joe, why were you doing this?
And you actually see this, the user, as opposed to web server number 34.
Exactly. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And, it gets to people being responsible for what they're doing.
Excellent. Great. I also saw on your blog, you've been busy interviewing. So you've been busy interviewing for a senior DBA role, somebody to do like major consolidation project, it looks like. I liked how you laid out that blog entry in terms of, what you were looking for in the candidate and that, and why some people are more successful than others in terms of making it through to the phone interview and then to the live interview and thereon. I'd love for you just to hit a couple of those points.
Well, one of my, I actually have several big points. We do not know everything. I do not know everything about Oracle. I do not know everything about security. And you're the same way. So if I ask, we all have our pet questions we ask. And I ask you a technical question, and you don't know the answer, and you say, I don't know the answer. Good. How? And then follow this up. This is how I would find out the answer. I would go to the Oracle documentation, try to talk out, the logic of the answer. If I ask you a question, if you encrypt a column, is the index encrypted? The answer is actually yes and no. If you already had an index on that column, the index, it will create an encrypted index, but what it does is it flips the bit on the old index blocks, marking those blocks free. So it creates a new index. So you now have ghost data. So that's one of my pet questions. I want to see how you'll go. Yeah, it creates an index, so they're an encrypted index. But what happens to the old one? It doesn't update the old index.
Do you have to actually physically get rid of that old index? Is that then a security breach?
I teach people to shred it if you're using files. And I also, if you're using ASM, it's really a painful way of dealing it. But what you have to do is you have to mark that table space not to grow. And then you are just going to fill it with random data. You're going to drop everything in the table space. You're going to fill it with random data over and over and over.
Like DDDing zeros all over it.
Yeah, and then you're going to drop the table space and do a rebalance.
Okay.
So, you hopefully overwrote everything. This young lady came in. We interviewed her on the phone yesterday. She started saying, can I get your phone number? Can I get your email address? And then she went into 5 minutes explaining what she has been doing for the past 20 years. And she was very articulate. She prepared. She might have been reading a script or going, just down bullet point notes.
But the point was she was prepared and she was vocal about it and had the energy.
Yes, and she had the energy. Several of the questions we asked her, she didn't know. She said, I don't know, but this is, how I think it works. Okay, that's important, how I think it works.
Yeah.
This is where I'll go for the answer. First thing I'd try is Google. Hey, we all Google things. Then I'd go to the Oracle documentation. And we called her in today for a face-to-face interview. And she performed just the same. She came in, good firm handshake, looked us in the eyes when she talked to us. She was prepared. She had printed out copies of her resume for everybody in case they didn't have a copy. And then we wound up offering her the job on the spot.
Nice.
But it's like, I want this person in my shop. She fits. She has the personality. She's friendly. She's professional. She was on time. Everything you could want in a senior DBA.
One of the things that's interesting is obviously security is one of the higher end skill sets when you're dealing with an Oracle database. I mean, typically people aren't going to start out and say, well, I'm first going to become a security guru. There's obviously some, I would assume, specialist tools that you use. Are there any favorite tools that you'd like to mention that are useful in your day-to-day job? Or is it all just a question of knowing what's in the database and knowing what tools the database offers?
My favorite tool is still SQL Developer.
Okay.
Hands down, that tool gives me, I'm going to say, 80% of what I need. I love the fact that if I'm working with a package, I can get an outline of the package. The debugger is fabulous. It's an easy tool to use. And they've also given in there, because I work DBA development, designer, architect. I wear almost every hat. They also given the SQL Developer I'm going to say a 30,000 foot view of your instance, everything that's going on in your instance, and you can click and drill down and get reports on what's happening, say in sessions, what's happening in your memory, what's happening with CPU usage, etc.
So do you then build your own custom scripts that you run out of SQL Dev that are security related to check stuff, or is there actually already built in?
A lot of the stuff I do are custom scripts to check the security. One of the things I use is on SQL injection when I'm testing for SQL injection flaws, I still do that by hand.
Okay.
There are tools you can download to do it, but I still do that by hand and also by reading the code. Please read the code. Have code reviews. I'll be talking about that next week at Collaborate. Specific security tools? No, not really. Enterprise Manager gives me, Enterprise Manager, we just came out with 13. I haven't loaded it up yet. That gives me a lot of the reports. I'm looking at a lot of audit information.
Okay.
I am looking at, I'm tracking the sensitive information in my database, such as social security numbers, credit card numbers, etc. Those are just custom scripts where I look for the information. When people select against certain tables, I want to audit that to find out who's pulling out what information. And that's been around forever. Fine grain auditing.
Okay.
Absolutely. Still use it. Use it extensively. Virtual private databases, I use those extensively. Redaction, I use that extensively. All those little tools, when you start combining them together, and again, along with secure coding practices, you can really start locking down your database. Sadly, a lot of the shops that I've worked in the past, and I get in and I start looking at the code, there's not a lot of secure coding going on.
Oh, okay.
And we need to get out there and teach more secure coding practices. And I'm putting together a set of presentations just on the secure coding. So hopefully, again, like I said earlier, I told you, I segment my data, my APIs, and my application code. And that is actually impervious to SQL injection.
Okay.
You can't do SQL injection against that architecture. Okay. And if you sit there and with this fine grain access through accessible by and also the granting the roles, if you have a bug, a SQL injection bug in one program unit, your whole stack is not exposed. It's just one program unit.
Yeah.
If you can't get to your sensitive API, well then, okay. You may have a little tiny leak, but still it's really difficult to pull off.
That's not a full system compromise.
Yes, absolutely.
Say they're a young developer and they're starting off and they want to get into the security aspect of it. I mean, it's the guy that says, that really interests me. I'm interested in that thing. What would be a good path for them in terms of going forward? Where would you tell them to start at?
Surprisingly, I would start by learning how the product breaks. What I have, as a matter of fact, on this notebook, I've got several virtual machines. I just download the Developer Day VMs, and I hack at them. I try to break them. And if I break it to the point where it's unfixable, I just reload the VM. And then you start proving yourself. If you want to study this, I'm sure, I know University of Maryland, Baltimore campus offers these classes. Some of the community college offers the cybersecurity classes, but that is separated from the database. They're not in the database.
A lot of times I've seen that is I've seen courses that have done like networking security or web security or, is talking about the middle tier, but it isn't really dealing with, database level security.
Yeah, and I'll give you a beautiful example. On one project, I kept getting these database scans, and they said, well, SYS has DBA privileges. You have to revoke DBA from SYS. And I pick up the report, walk back to security, and I'll explain, well, SYS is to Oracle as root is to Unix. And they go, oh, okay. Would you please fix your scan? A month later, it would be on there again.
Yeah.
And it was full of these things. They'd give me 20,000 lines of security flaws, and I'm sitting there every month going through going, no, that's not really, and I'd have to go back and explain it.
Yeah.
It's just the internals of Oracle. You need to understand the internals of Oracle on how things do work. Read everything you can on hacking, on database hacking. I think David Litfield's got a really good book out on it. Try to break the product. Understand how the database actually works.
And by that, you mean try to break the product in a database developer VM as opposed to the production database.
Yes. Break the VM that you put on your notebook. This is my sandbox. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do not put production data on it, please. Please do not put production data. You can generate all kinds of test data. You can test your encryption. You can test the network encryption, the SQLnet encryption. You can test all of the security products right within your laptop using these VMs you can download. There's one VM that I would like to see them put out there, and that is the Database Firewall Audit Vault. But you can download that product from OTN and then load it on your machine.
Yeah.
So, but get out there and work with it, understand how it breaks. That way, when you're in a production environment, see, that's how I learned. I learned by breaking things.
Uh-huh.
I did not start with any formal education in security. It was more of an interest, and I say, can I do this?
You were passionate about it, and you kept on plugging away at it.
Yeah, and I found a few things that were fairly interesting. Like I learned redaction is not a security feature, it is a privacy feature.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize if I have connect privileges and select on the table, I can extract redacted information. And I'm not going to go any further. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. And another interesting thing is if you gather histograms on encrypted data, that data is stored in the histogram tables. So you sit there and you go, oh, well, it's stored unencrypted. But you can't encrypt the optimizer tables.
Yeah.
So that's the case for database firewall, where you want to wall off that information if you gather histograms.
So that you make sure that only people that are approved can actually get to that information.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time. Super appreciate you just sharing with us just your experience and the different ideas about security and that. And again, congratulations on database design and winning the award there in the Devvies. So thanks again. Keep up the good work and contributing back to the community.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Todd.
Yeah.